Before we leave the Sarcomastogophora, let me just say that your book calls it Zoomastogena. Now, all that means, guys, is that they're animals. That's the zoo part. And then the Mastogena or Mastogophora, that's the same word. It means that they're animal-like. So they're animal-like that moves by means of flagella. Zoomastogena is the old term that they use. Sarcomastogophora is the new, but your book is using the old. So I noticed on your homework sheet they were asking for the ones that move by means of flagella, and they use Zoomastogena. So know that that's the same thing. You probably have already figured it out. I've graded a number of them, and you did very well. But just so you know that they're the same thing. All right, let's move to AP complexa. Now, AP complexa, these are known as the sporozoans because they reproduce by spores, and they're the only ones that reproduce by spores. So there's about 4,000 species in this particular phylum, and they don't have any means of locomotion. These are parasitic, and they're animal parasites, and they have very, very complex life cycles. I will not be asking you about a lot of complex life cycles. It's not important to me. Every one of them has a life cycle, and they all have different stages, and sometimes they can be very confusing. So just know that they do have a lot of different types of life cycles. But what they don't have is they don't have a means of locomotion, which means if they're parasitic, they're probably traveling in the bloodstream. Now, all apicomplexans are animal parasites, and they are asexual and sexual reproducers. Remember, if it's asexual, then it's going to be binary fission or multiple fission. If it's sexual, it's conjugation. They contain organelles called an apical complex. Now, apical kind of means peak or the apex, and so this complex at the pointed end of these protists enable them to bore through a host cell and the host tissue, because the host, of course, is going to be the one that has the parasite. And as these parasites move through our system, they have to be able to gain entry into our cells. So they all have this pointed end, and it's called the apical complex, and there's going to be some specialized structures that help them gain entry into our tissues. Now, because they do have these wild life cycles, they have 2 or more hosts, and they have to have that to complete. So let me just clarify that a minute. Very often, some of these parasites, we may be the final host, but there may be some intermediate host. So for some of them, the intermediate host might be a snail. The snails are intermediate hosts for a lot of different types of parasites. The intermediate host may be another worm. They may enter the dog before they enter you. The intermediate host could be a mosquito. So they may enter one or more intermediates before they end up in their final host, which is us. So know that because they do have different life cycles, like if we ever get to the animal kingdom, we'll see that some, have to crawl up in a cocoon. Some of them have many, many different intermediate forms. We do not. We're direct developers. But a lot of these parasites will enter other hosts before they get to their final host.